I'd like to call this meeting to order. We need to begin with as a motion to adopt today's agenda.
I so moved.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Votes aye as well. We also need a motion to approve the minutes from the November 30th, or it wasn't November 30th, was it?
Yes, it was.
Oh, November 30th board meeting. I was thinking it was December. Board meeting.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye as well. A chance to read those. All right, well, this is an opportunity for the public comment to comment on any public matter that is not on the agenda of the meeting and is within the jurisdiction of the Teachers Retirement Board. However, the board may not take action on any issues raised unless it's included on the agenda and public comment has been allowed. If issues are raised that would require board action, the issue would need to be included on the agenda for a future meeting. Public matter does not include disability applications, contested cases, or other adjudicative proceedings.
Kim, do you want to introduce yourself to the rest of the board?
Sure. I'm Kim Popham. I'm the Director of Research and Policy at MFPE, and I actually just left the classroom in December, so here I am.
Where were you teaching prior to?
I taught in Stevensville for 8 years and then in Belgrade for 19 years.
Awesome. And I'm not sure, I don't know who you are.
I'm Jennifer Van Sickle. I'm the new communication specialist.
Oh, okay, awesome. So I wasn't here last time, so I'm like, I don't know who you are.
I wasn't here last time either.
Oh, okay, so, all right. Okay, so Dan Trost would normally do the investment report. Are we just going to skip that part?
I think, Madam Chair, Director Villa will be here, and he'll give his annual report. So I don't know that, unless there's questions about the little synopsis I wrote or the actual investment report, I believe this is the same one. Actually, Dan will be speaking to our numbers through the end of January, and then he'll talk about fiscal year end numbers from last year, as well as kind of the outlook for the rest of the fiscal year. So unless there's questions, I think we just probably can move on.
Does anyone have any questions? Dee, did you have anything? All right. So we're on to our comprehensive financial report, Nolan.
Take my seat here. All right, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Nolan Brills, and I'm the accounting fiscal manager for the new member. So I'll be presenting today. You know, every board meeting after the first of the year, we usually have the financial report done and audited at that time. It's usually done closer to sometime in the fall, but we usually, don't have it printed, and the audit isn't usually completed until sometime in December, and we got to include the audit opinion in the actual financial report. So you all have a hard copy, and we can get those other board members sent a hard copy that aren't here. And really, I mean, I'm not going to go through this thing word for word or anything, but the one page that's probably pages 16 and 17 are going to be the statement of fiduciary net position and statement of changes in fiduciary net position, and that's kind of what all the notes that follow, the financial notes that follow, and the required supplemental information that follows are about, so that's kind of the meat of it. I mean, for new board members, it's definitely a good thing to kind of look through, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time, or Sean. And there is an investment section of the financial report, as well as an actuarial section that's updated by the actuary, and then a statistical section in the back that's all good information. But the beginning and those financial statements and notes are probably, those are what are audited by the auditors, and we did receive, no recommendations So a clean audit, again, this year. We did send off we get an award every year as long as our financial report is, legible and has everything that's required. And that's the GFOA as an organization that does that. And so we get that award every year. We did, put in for that award again this year. I think we've received it, was it 15 years in a row or something like that. So I don't really have much more to say about the financial report unless anyone has any questions.
Thanks for all your hard work.
So I can move on to, I always present, for the, I always present the financial statements, as like the current month or the most recent month end, which was as of January 31st. In these financial statements.
So kind of stop just for a second. So it's behind tab 3.
Oh, sorry.
You'll get to.
Yeah, page 19, I guess, in your packet is the start of the, so we'll look at like the balance sheet, the fund balance statement, and the investment revenue and expenses. And it's, we always have a comparison of the current situation versus like 1 year ago. So these are the January 31st, 2024, and it also includes January 31st of 2023. So you can kind of see 1 year back information. So,
when I was looking at it, can you just let me know why the cash changed by 1.3 million there on that first line?
So cash flow is really, it can fluctuate dramatically because, so we pay $35 million, every month to our benefit recipients. So, and we're receiving anywhere from 100,000 to $2 or $3 million a day from our schools. So it depends on which schools are reporting. Obviously Billings is a really large report every time. Missoula, those big schools, and then so it just kind of it all depends on the way we manage cash flow. Is we get all of our contributions in from our schools, and then I purchase STIP which is the short-term investment pool through Board of Investments, and then they turn that STIP into more long-term investments or equity investments or.
So 1.3 million is just.
In fact, there's been months,
number.
like if I were to sell STIP, to make our benefit payments like 1 day earlier, a lot of this would say like $30 million, we got over $30 million in cash because then we got to make that payment right at the first of the month. So.
Okay.
So yeah, there's always a little fluctuation there, and that's definitely not out of the ordinary what you see there.
It's a good question though.
Yeah, and I do, that's something that we, the accounting unit manages every single day. We try to keep our cash actually at almost zero if possible, because we'd rather have it invested for our members, so.
And all schools report at the same time or different times?
It's all different. Yeah, it comes in throughout the month. It kind of depends on how they run their payroll, and then
Some are bi-monthly and some are monthly?
right. Yeah, and then they're required to report to us once a month, but like you said, that could include 2 payrolls or even some months 3 payrolls.
Right.
Or there's still a lot of schools that pay just once a month, so then that's more regular. But they come in. We get contributions and payroll or wage and contribution reports every single day. I can't think of a day that we hadn't get at least one, because we have like 365 employers, so there's at least a couple of them reporting every day, and sometimes a lot, in that month. So contribution reports are due on the 15th of the following month. So, if we're talking about the wage and contribution reports for January, that's due by February 15th to us. And there's always, not always, but usually there's a few delinquent reports that have, are maybe a few days that they haven't got the report in, and I have to be in contact with those employers and stuff, so.
Okay, so if they do like a bank hiccup, sometimes, like we switched, at our school, we switched,
Oh, sure.
like direct deposit went crazy a month ago, does
Oh,
that affect
sure.
it? Cause someone else.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can. I mean, we manage like, I would say 80 to 90% of our employers pay by ACH or direct deposit, but there's still some checks coming in, so,
Right.
I mean, and if we have like a form that they have to fill out, to provide us the proper bank information, there has been, over the years, there's obviously been a few where, they forgot to inform us that they switched banks or that they closed that bank account, and then we had to, but we have ways of obviously dealing with all those situations, so.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so the cash there is not a huge difference. In fact, like I said, what we try to do is keep it as low as possible, and you may even sometimes see it in the negative. You can go negative cash, because the state kind of covers it for up to 7 business days. We try not to obviously get anywhere close to that, but there have been times where we've had negative cash just for a few days or whatever, so the closer to zero, the better, I guess. But yeah, you can see the total investments at, in comparison to 1 year earlier, we're up by, 300 million. So, and we'll see that kind of on the next page, kind of where that's coming from. So our total assets are up about 300 million from this time last year. And it's going to be the vast majority of our, growth comes in investment earnings, of course. We do have, there is the one difference I'll point out, that intangible assets have been completely depreciated. So that just means there's a zero there for this year, where that basically just means that the InTrust project that we've been, slowly working on, and we've had phase 2 and 3 that we actually depreciated over time. Those are fully depreciated now, so you will see that zero on the balance sheet going forward, where we've kind of, at least in the last 10 years or so, we've always kind of had a balance there, so. And then I guess on kind of towards the bottom there, that year-to-date income, that's, you can see last year at this time, we had a negative, we had a loss as far as our income. And this year we have a $62 million income versus, we're in the black, I guess I should say. And so that's kind of, you'll see that on the next page. If you switch to page 20, the fund balance statement, you can see that our investment revenue is, 213 million versus last year about 78 million at this time. So that gives us a total revenue of the 327 million. And then below that, you'll see all of our expenses. And of course, the big one is always going to be our benefit payments to our retirees. And that continues to go up every year because of the GABA that everyone gets, and just more retirees, of course, too. So in the end, you kind of see our bottom line there, the total revenue over expenses of the 62 million, whereas last year we kind of had a loss. So that's where you're getting that end fund balance. Any questions on any of that information? The last page is those investment revenue by sources, and then the administrative expenses kind of by type, broken down by type. And you can see where everything sits. The biggest difference is our appreciation of our investments. Whereas last year we were, had appreciated our investments to a clip of about 28 million, and this year it's at 156 million, so. And then our investment expenses are not, we do have, more personal services, of course. We got the 4% increase from the legislature. So that's probably the majority of that increase from last year. However, the total overall is not much of a difference. We are required to keep our administrative expenses under 1.5% of benefits paid. And in 2023, we're at 0.87%. So and I'd anticipate it to be right around there, or maybe even a little less, because of our amortization expense is going to actually be quite a bit less this year because we've already amortized that.
Good job.
Thank you. It's not really, it's kind of all of it. I just present the numbers, but.
Well, and just to clarify, that is just TRS administrative expense. The investment expenses come out, like the numbers we're looking at for as far as investments are net of investment expenses. Just so you're aware. I mean, those are captured actually in the ACFR, right, Nolan?
Yeah, you'll be able to see that, yeah. You can see our like I said, if you look at page 16, 17 of the financial report, you can see our investment expense on page 17. It's that 27 million. But we had income, investment income of 417 million, so.
Yeah, and 27 million on 5 billion in investments isn't.
Yeah, I mean, they are managing close to $5 billion of our money, so.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say they, I mean, you have to talk to Dan soon about
He'll be here.
who they are.
He's the they.
So any questions on any of the financial statements? Because I can move on to I also present the budget status report as of the most recent month. The fiscal year runs obviously from July 1st through June 30th. So we're a little over halfway, through the fiscal year as of January 31st. And the board passes, in the May board meeting, we do a budget justification spreadsheet, or a budget justification that the board agrees on and passes. There are members of the board that sit on the budget committee that we go over the budget with them beforehand, so we rely heavily on them also. So this was the budget that was passed in last May for the fiscal year 2024, and then kind of the expenses year to date and then projections that, kind of show where we're at in comparison to our budget. We did have some vacancy savings for, just various positions that have been open here at TRS throughout the year. We are fully staffed. Oh, no, I'm sorry, but there is one vacant position right now. I feel like every time we get fully staffed, there ends up being one more, but the personal services, so that's why you see that 46,000 in personal services. That's going to be like what we project as a surplus in that particular category, and then each category going down is kind of broken down: contracted services, supplies and materials, communications. Some categories we're projecting to overspend, and then some categories we're expecting to have a surplus. So kind of in the end, I mean, we're looking at like $100,000 to $150,000 surplus that we're projecting to have. Obviously, things can change. We have 5 more months and, you know, things could change between now and then. The audit fees, if you see that on there, that's kind of a different budget category. We have to budget that for a biennium, so 2 years. And so, you know, the budget that we received from the Legislative Audit Division was about 178,000 that we, you know, should budget over the next 2 years. So I only anticipate spending half of that. So we're gonna have like a $90,000 surplus in that particular category, kind of no matter what. Because we'll carry that surplus over or that budget over, and then we won't spend more than that in the next year. So then we'll be projected to spend like all of it next year. So I don't know if that makes sense. Probably didn't do the best job explaining that, but really what you want to look at least this year, is the surplus in personal services and then the total operating. So those two combined are really closer to where we're at, which is somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 range, because that extra 90,000 is something that we're going to have kind of no matter what. So. And then this page 23 is that's one of our just biggest categories that we kind of break down for the board, each board meeting, but it's our contracted services, and it kind of shows you, you know, where we're at and you know, where we're expected to be. We do, you know, we're about 58% through the fiscal year, and we've spent about 53% of the budget. So we're kind of right on pace with that big budget category.
It's like we have 2 categories where we anticipated a lot less spending.
Yeah, the one medical
small numbers.
luckily medical services, it wasn't a huge expense. I mean, it's 7, but yeah, we just had some really big cases that Tammy could probably speak to better
Yeah,
than I can.
and it kind of fluctuates each and every fiscal year, but, you know, it just depends on the number of cases that have to be reviewed by our contract physician. And
It's typically a
unfortunately,
disability
Yeah.
application that we would ask our doctor to look over, so.
And then, you know, just to show you a kind of how this can fluctuate quickly, you know, you can see that we have budgeted like 37,000 for legal fees, and we've actually not had any legal fee. You know, we haven't spent anything on that yet. So, but that can obviously add up really quick if anything comes up. So, so that just shows you, you know, where that budget surplus can go down. But I do anticipate that we shouldn't need to come to the board for any sort of budget amendment unless something crazy comes up. So, and the last page is always, I mean, I always show the board our delinquent agencies. This was, as you can see, as of February 5th. So we were looking for the December reports because those were due. Those were what were due as of that time, that day. And these 3 employers actually have, you know, remitted those reports since then. Of course, now it's, you know, past February 15th, so the January reports are due, and there's very few employers that don't have their January report in, and I'm in contact with those folks constantly, so that's all I have. Unless there's any questions.
Glad to hear the administrative change. Number 2 was able to get that thing corrected.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Nolan.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Our next discussion item is our tentative meeting dates, and I know that Dee brought to Sean's attention that May 3rd does not work for you, correct, Dee?
That's right. I'll be in Waco, Texas for my daughter's PhD dissertation, or her graduation, and we're so excited about it.
That is very exciting. So check our calendars quickly and just see if May 17th works. Works for me.
It's my
Okay.
birthday, I'll need to check
Oh.
with my wife, but I'm sure I can make it.
We'll bring a cupcake.
We'll get you a different hotel.
Yeah.
I don't know that I need a hotel, I'll find somewhere.
It's open for this one.
Yeah, Dan Charles said it was open for him as well.
All right. But tentatively, we will look to May 17th.
Thank you
Or-
for changing that. I appreciate it.
That's an important thing. And it's always, if we know ahead of time, is great. But then we always put the next dates as well, just to keep them on your calendar and to keep you aware of them. August 2nd, we always have a summer meeting, which is more of a board training type of thing. October 4th, which is usually quite set in stone because of our actuaries that need to come from Georgia. And they come for PERS and us at the same time. And then December 6th has changed in the past sometimes as well. So if any of those don't work in the future,
What was
let
the
us know.
August one again?
August is 2nd, August 2nd.
Okay.
And in the summertime, you know, it
Well,
seems to
if
be a
I
little
contract,
more.
usually I'm working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, I can fly in here on the way home. I'll just have my wife pick me up. So she has an aunt in town.
Okay.
Yeah, just summertime for me, it's just a logistical thing, not a,
Okay,
Friday's usually wide open, so.
well, and we can usually as well, I mean, like D, we can
Right.
do it online if
Right.
ever needed as well, so.
If I got stuck somewhere, it'd be in an airport anyway, so I can find a corner, I'm good at that.
On the front page, it lists the dates.
Yep. Oh, okay.
I listed up there. You mentioned that the August 2nd one is normally a training. Is that a longer day or is that still just a half day?
So every other year, we do what I would call more full-on strategic planning, where we have a consultant come in and he kind of leads us through our discussions, and that takes pretty much a full day. This upcoming August is the odd year, so it should only be about a half a day meeting,
Okay.
right around there.
And even then, we're, you know, it's 2, 3 o'clock, you know, it's not, we don't,
Still
Yeah.
plenty of time to get home.
Yeah,
we're never too late.
no.
If I'm running the meeting, we're never, no, I'm kidding.
Got it.
I don't want to be here all day. All right. All right, so then we have a couple action items. Well, quite a few here, but we can do them all at once. It's the out-of-state travel. And so it looks like John Noble will go to the PRISM Annual Conference in May, and Tammy, GFOA Conference in May, Denise to the NAPA Conference in June, and Sean to the NCTR Director Meeting in June. So we just need a motion to approve those action items.
I move to approve the out-of-state travel for the named individuals.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion of that? I know these are all very beneficial meetings, and many of our people, you know, this is training we require and expected
Budgeted for it.
budget for it already, and so yes. All right, all those in favor of the out-of-state travel action item indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. This is another time for public comments, if anyone has anything. All right, so the next meeting date as of now, and the information item is May 17th. Just make sure that is in the board minutes. And we are on to the executive director's report, so Sean will take over.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So behind tab 4 in your hard packet is the Executive Director's Report. As far as an operations update goes, I just wanted to update the board. We are making some progress on an identity verification solution for our online processing. Something that would be in addition to our current two-factor authentication that we use for logging in and accessing my TRS. We have met with LexisNexis, but really it's looking like DocuSign Solutions may be the most promising as far as utilizing it from a cost perspective and really for what we need. It's looking like that might work, but we're currently working through some pricing with them. We do have, the state of Montana does have an enterprise agreement with DocuSign, and we can utilize it for kind of low-level things right now, but we would want to add on at least identity verification to that service, which I think we can do a la carte. It's looking good, but we don't have firm numbers yet. I suspect that you will have those. It will be part of our budget submission in May, where we'll be asking for some additional funding to start utilizing that for sure next year, attached to online withdrawals, so that it really truly is a completely online process. Currently, they step through everything, let us know where the money's going, all that, and they have to print out a piece of paper and take it and have it physically notarized and then send it into TRS. We want to get away from that, so it's truly an online process. And then, of course, there'll be other things that we will attach that verification to down the road. And then the second thing, and we'll talk about this more in May, and certainly with the budget committee, and then we can talk about it as a discussion item in May. But just the potential for utilizing, it's called medical, let me see what I wrote it down here. Managed Medical Review Organization for disability requests. I think it's looking like I think the frequency and the complexity of some of our disability requests have gotten such. I mean, that's why you saw the increase in the medical costs versus like what we typically would have. I think that it might be beneficial for TRS to explore the opportunities to have a little bit broader net for those disability requests. And we have some information we've already gathered, and like I said, I'll go over that in detail with the budget subcommittee prior to our May meeting, and then we'll have it as a discussion item as part of the budget request. And then that wouldn't go into effect until July 1 of the start of next fiscal year.
And Sean, what do you mean by a broader net?
So they have, currently, we have access to, the sky's the limit in some respects, but we have to go find those physicians to do like specific reviews, where this company, they do pre-claim management, they review all the documentation before it's ever sent to a physician. They have I think it's a registered nurse who's in charge of doing that, to make sure everything's in order before it's ever referred to a physician. And then once it gets referred to a physician, it's a medical board review. So they have access to doctors all over the country, and then they provide you with a written report and recommendation. And Para started utilizing this service about 6 years ago, and they have had really good results utilizing their service. They also offer, and I don't know whether we would utilize this piece or not, maybe in certain circumstances, they offer the review after you've already approved a disability, and they come up for their annual review or the review, that whatever timeline that they're on, to make sure that everything's still holding true, that they truly are disabled, and they'll make a recommendation back to the board. It's just getting to the point, Tammy does most of this right now, and it's all, there's a lot of hand holding to get there. And she's also has other things on her plate. Not to say that she can't keep up with it, but I just think it may be beneficial for TRS to have a little bit broader net, is kind of the way I would put it.
So would that change our medical services?
It would. We would enter into a contract with MMRO. We would estimate, I think our average, 10-year average was about 15 or 12.
Oh, no, it was 9.
Or 9, yeah. So 9 cases per year that go to our contract physician to review. We can budget that out with MMRO using their price schedule, and that would be a budget request at our May meeting for next year.
And we believe the ROI on that would be beneficial to TRS overall.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Sean, how much follow-up after somebody gets okayed for disability is there after the fact? I mean, a follow-up a year later, a follow-up 2, 3, 5 years later. Do we ever do that?
I'll defer to Tammy, she can
Yes.
explain better, but yes, we do that.
Member Brown, yes, we do. So there's an annual disability review process that retired payroll conducts every year prior to, so actually we just started the process this month where they mail out letters to the individuals that are receiving a disability benefit to actually determine, based upon the determination that retired payroll does, looking at the disability review, who has to submit a physician statement of continued disability as well as an annual earnings statement to the teacher's retirement system. So yes, that process happens every year. And of course, the statute says the person will go through a review for every year up until age 60, and then for annual disabilities that are actually receiving compensation, then an annual earnings statement will be required as long as they're actively working and can, have wages reported to either the teacher's retirement system or the fact that they're working in some other position that may not be reportable to us. That information still has to be, provided to TRS. So yes, long story short.
And so then this transition frees you up to work on other things, and then this new organization would take over that particular role of going.
Well, it doesn't actually free me up because I would actually be working with MMRO. It's just a different process, I guess, as far as handling the disability reviews right now. I would still actually, I think on the front end, what Sean and I talked about, I would still actually handle the initial, contacting the individual or communicating with the individual, providing certain information. But at the point that we require receive the documentation, it would then be turned over to MMRO instead of our contract physicians that we use now currently. And then they will manage that process of actually, so right now I'm not a physician and nor am I an RN. I don't know if all the detail is there for our contract physician. So what happens is I collect documentation, I give it to our contract physician. The physician will do a review and say, oh, by the way, in the records, I see X, Y, and Z, I need this information. So then I follow up with the member to get that additional information. Whereas this process would happen through MMRO, you would have a registered nurse looking at the information at the beginning, saying we need X, Y, and Z before it's ever turned over to a physician review. So
we would still maintain our contract physicians.
Not the ones that we would use those through MMRO, because they actually have a board of physicians, whereas we have, a limited resource here in Montana. So not that we can't go find those if we need them, but it just makes our lives easier.
When we do it, then are we utilizing folks in Montana, or are we?
No, we're utilizing folks in Montana.
Okay.
Yeah, we contract with.
And so the new
physicians.
situation would be using people across the United States.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then again, like Sean said, whether we use them for the follow-up process, that's a part we would have to discuss and add on if that would be. But yes, we would. And right now that's handled by retired payroll in that process. I do not, other than just a review of who is actually going to be getting documentation, that I'm involved in that process. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think our biggest benefit out of that comes in the clinical claim management services, where they have a disability nurse case manager, like Tammy just said, that really makes sure all the documentation that's necessary is there before it's ever referred to the physician group. And then, of course, their physician group is nationwide, so if they need an expert in A, B, or C, they have those. They can send it to them for that review.
And we struggle with finding those experts in Montana sometimes.
We could. I mean, we've never had too much trouble, but I mean, it's also, we rely pretty heavily on just a couple of our people most of the time, unless they just tell us, look, I'm not an expert in this field, or I don't know enough about this field, and then we would go outside of the box. But typically it's still someone within the state of Montana. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just we're not experts on finding those folks and knowing who those experts are, or this is what these people, they do.
It's their profession.
Nationwide, yes.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Okay, so moving on to number 2. So Jennifer Van Sickle, who is here in the room with us, is our new communications specialist. Darla included some more information about Jennifer's background in the communications manager report. But we are certainly excited to have her on board, and if you want to just say hello or something, I think most everybody was here at the beginning, but Jennifer's been here now for a little over a month about, right?
Yeah, about 6 weeks or so. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I come from a healthcare background. Originally, I did ultrasound and did a career switch over to communications. So I got my master's in communications, and I've been at DPHHS before this doing health education, and so I'm glad to be here in a dedicated communications role. So that's great. Yeah.
And Darla's happy to have her here.
Yeah. Yes. I will second that.
Yeah. And then second on there on the staff update, Becca Bremer actually was out on FMLA for a while. She had a child, and she let us know after, I don't know, 8 or 9 weeks that she decided to be a stay-home mom for a while. So we do have a vacancy currently in the retired payroll benefit specialist position. We've been advertising for that. We went through 1 round of interviews. Our top candidate actually took another job, but the day before we were going to be able to offer her the job. So we are going to re-advertise that. It was a decent pool as far as the number of applicants, and hopefully, this next pool will be similar, and we'll find somebody that we think will be a good fit for TRS.
So Sean, is that going to be a semi-permanent position, or is this gal coming back at some point?
So this is a permanent full-time FTE, and so she's not coming back. She resigned her position to stay home. So we are looking for a 1.0 FTE to fill this vacant position.
Okay, so not a leave, but yeah. Okay, thank you.
So if there are no questions on the staff update, I'll move on to the legislative interim committee update. So those of you that have been on the board for a little while, you're aware that there's a Senate joint resolution number 4 called for a pension study group. That group includes all of the SAVA members, the State Administration Veterans Affairs Committee members, as well as 4 members from the Legislative Finance Committee. They met on January 25th from 8:30 to 11:30. I listed the topics that were covered during that meeting. They looked at the history of investment performance for both TRS and PRS. They looked at our history of assumed rate of return, as far as what years we made those changes and what the rate of return was prior to the change. They looked at specifically House Bill 377 for TRS from the 2013 legislative session, just to make sure they understood all of the pension reform that was done at that time as far as creating a new tier of membership, and the impact of that new tier of membership as far as those benefits not being quite as valuable as the previous tier, as well as the contribution increases and the state funding that was provided for back in 2013. As well as sort of how that has impacted TRS over the past 10 years. For PRS, it was House Bill 454, very similar changes were made to PRS at that time. And of course, both those bills took the systems from a point where they did not amortize in any period of time to where they amortized in under 30 years. And TRS, currently amortizes in 24 years. We've been as low as 22 years prior to making some modifications to our assumptions, the biggest one being the assumed rate of return. But we've never been back over, I think we may have been over 30. We jumped to 31 just 1 year when we had the downturn. When was that, 2017 or 18, when we had the market loss, but it came right back the following year when we had a 27% return. So they looked at that, they looked at the contribution rates, the statutory appropriations, and then there were 5 or 6 different NASR reports in their packet. So the meeting went fine. That pension group has a lot of work that they have identified they want to try to do, and I have some of that listed, the topics, tasks and topics for their future meetings. Seeing as it's, the next meeting they have is in March, which I have a little bit better breakdown of it here, but they're gonna meet again in March, May, July, September, and October. And if you go through these topics that I have in your packet, there's a whole lot of work to be done in a pretty short amount of time. So I would imagine either in March or May that they may pare this down some because they really have to have their committee bills approved at their October meeting if SAP is going to have a bill of their own. So they are looking into a lot of things, and I'm not going to read this word for word, but I'll just kind of step through. Topic 1 is using retirement benefit as a recruitment and retention tool. Of course, we have our survey that Darla conducted last fall that will work very, very nicely for this topic. We'll be able to show at least what our membership thinks about the defined benefit plan. Topic 2 is evaluating risks. Carrie certainly would remember, and Dee, I don't remember if you were on the board at that time, but we did full-blown risk analysis. We had Kavanaugh McDonald come in and do a risk report that's still out on our website. It cost us about $30,000 to do that. And, they ran all kinds of different risk evaluations as far as, the order of returns, lower returns up front and then higher returns later, vice versa. And there was a lot more to it. So the Legislative Fiscal Division has an appropriation in their budget for actuarial services, and I believe they're contracting with Chiron, who used to be the actuary for the public employees retirement system. And I think that they're going to do some of their own risk analysis, which is fine. I mean, they're going to be using our high level numbers as far as what our assets are, what our unfunded liability is, so on and so forth. It shouldn't be any different than if we had our own actuary do those same exercises. In fact, our actuary does a little bit of that. We have a risk section in our annual valuation reports now, and it's required under ASOP. So there's not going to be any surprises that come out of that work.
So I guess, Sean, I have a question there. If they're hiring a new actuary and they have to use the numbers that we supply them, what's the reason to even spend the money?
Great question, Dee.
It's the legislature. I don't know. Sometimes I think they have more comfort hearing it from their own people. I don't know. I think part of what Chiron also will be tasked with is developing a dashboard, which, if you remember from even your time on that committee, they talk a lot about having a dashboard that tells them when it's time to act. I always try to point out that I will tell them with a bill when it's time to act. But I think that they want to have something that can show trends, and they're going to build a tool so you can plug different numbers in. If you assume 6% rate of return, what does that do? If you assume 7.5, what does that do? But yeah, I can't speak necessarily to the rationale other than they want them to be able to do exactly whatever work that committee comes up with, instead of relying on TRS or Impera to provide the numbers through our actuary.
Well, I just hope they remember that we're all truth sayers, and to hire more people to just say the same truth and build some fancy dancy dashboard. I guess I have some questions about it, but I'm not there to argue my point.
But I bet you know people, Dee, and I think you should contact them.
Actually, I probably do know some people.
Moving on to topic 3. So Senate Bill 29, they're going to assess the impact of Senate Bill 29, which that was a bill that Senator McCamey brought through the legislature for PRS, and what that would have done would have been to add 0.1% additional employer contribution for 10 years. It died in committee, but I think that's an idea that some of them are thinking about still bringing forward next session. Topic 4 is where it may get a little bit dicey. I think the numbers will prove that it's not a good idea. I mean, they always have in the past, but they want to look at the defined benefit to defined contribution transition as far as risks, the pros, the cons, and what other states have done. So that will be definitely discussions that I will be involved with, and I'll provide all the information I can. I mean, we have a sort of glaring example just in TRS of what happens when you do that if you don't continue to pay the bill, and that was the closure of TRS to new hires of the university system. And so those folks belong to the MUS retirement program now. And there is a significant unfunded liability that's tied to those that the rest of our members and employers in the state of Montana are still paying for. So I'll definitely be providing all that information to the committee, and we'll just kind of see where those discussions go.
We also have other states to look to, Alaska currently, and
Yes.
West Virginia, many other states that have tried the very same thing and failed.
Right. Absolutely. And then the 5th topic they have listed is changing the existing plan design. I think that's more, I think what will come of that is more to do with layered amortization versus our current amortization method. Which if funding was guaranteed and there would never be any political pushback, I would agree. Layered amortization would be a great way to go. The problem is the volatility that layered amortization introduces to your contribution levels is something that I don't know that that our employers in the state of Montana would stand for very long. If you think about our normal cycle of how things work for TRS, there's nothing that's going to happen in a 2-year period between legislative sessions. They can't be overcome by the time we get to that next legislature. Let's say, for instance, we had 2 years of negative 10% return, and we did need to act. We would bring a bill forward. We're not going to spend down $5 billion in assets in that time period. We would bring a bill, maybe you're 12 months later than you would be if it was automatic increase in contributions, but then at least the legislature gets to weigh in on it, as well as the governor's office, which is the budget office, as far as what funding is available and what other solutions are available. So I think that's mostly what topic 5 will be about. So then I just listed, so they are also going to utilize Pew's services. In fact, Pew and Chiron will both be at their March meeting. In fact, I think myself and the administration from Impera are only going to be there for question and answer. But Pew is going to provide some research and analysis, like as far as what are some other examples of what other states are doing, how does Montana sort of stack up. We've had this before. This is I started in 13, so this is like my 5th interim, and every interim that I've been the director, we've had a pension study group, so Pew has always sort of been involved. I'm not really scared of anything that they're gonna say. It sort of is what it is. We know where we fall into the mix. And then the final thing I have listed in your packet is the amount of appropriation that the legislature provided to the fiscal division for that actuarial services. It looks like they have up to $65,000 in fiscal year 24, which is the current fiscal year, and then an additional $50,000 for fiscal year 25. Like I said, we talked a little bit about what kind of things Chiron might provide them. I think we'll know more after the March meeting, but we do not have any sort of MOU or anything like that with them to provide our member level data at this point. So they're going to only be working with sort of the high level information that comes right out of our actuarial report. And then, the risk analysis tied to that's, it's pretty straightforward. If you reduce your assumed rate, your unfunded liabilities are going to go up. If you increase it, they're going to go down. It won't be anything new. So with that, are there any questions? I know that's a lot of information. And like I said, that study group is going to be very busy. certainly, and like, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they don't pare this down a little bit, because I just don't see them having enough time to really get into the weeds on all of those topics, but we'll see. I'll be busy.
Yes, you will. All right. Well, this is also an opportunity for public comment. Is this something you would like to comment on?
No. Well, we're here to support you guys in any way we can because our members are part of TRS. And so the executive team at MFP has been working hard on this, and we've been talking with Sean a lot lately. And so we will also be at that meeting, so stay tuned.
All right. Communication managers report, then we'll move on. Darla.
I'm gonna have Jen join me up here.
All right, excellent.
Any questions for her? You can get the chair up. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm not gonna read this entire report to you, but you've already met Jen. That's the biggest change we have, and I'm such a strict supervisor that I make her match. what I'm wearing.
Yes, so please wear pink today.
So that's been huge. You all were, well, except for our new members, participated in all the discussion about why the workload exceeded my ability to manage it all, and approved this enthusiastically, which I very much appreciate. I think we all do. Jen, as she mentioned, has a background in healthcare as well as prior communications experience. Sought an advanced degree in that, which is very impressive. She seems to be more extroverted than I am, which is probably a good thing for this kind of a role. So as I mentioned in here, she has dived in head first, feet first, whatever way you want to put it, on some projects that could be very time consuming. I would never get done. One of which being our plan to redesign our public website to be more responsive and mobile friendly. So she's collected a lot of information on that. We're not yet on SITSD's schedule for her to begin working. We'll both be involved, but she'll be sort of more deeply involved perhaps than I will with the ins and outs of working with them to get a template built. So there's an example of where we're going. I think I showed the board 2 examples of websites that I liked from other plans, one being the California Teachers Retirement System and one being Kansas, KPERS and CalSTRS. There's similar templates in use all over the country, and it turns out that the DNRC website, the template they use seems to match most closely to what we were thinking, and so they're going to kind of model ours on that existing state template, but we get to pick our colors and all that kind of stuff. So because we have to rely on technical assistance for that, I'm not sure when we'll actually see a prototype, but we are working on it, and thank goodness she's here to help with that because it was beyond my technical skills and time. So let's see, I just sort of put categories in this report kind of revolving around what's in the strategic plan. So our employer outreach activities, we do what we can. We work with, Nolan and I work with MASBO mostly, the Montana Association of School Business Officials, since they're the ones that typically are the ones doing all the reporting to TRS. We attend a lot of their in-person and virtual events, and my role in that is mostly just to prepare the materials, and Nolan gives the presentation as well as John L. Sedlock on topics like termination pay and how they report that. It's not on here because it's new since I wrote this, but we've actually been invited to a traffic education conference in April. So it's outside of MASBO, but another opportunity for us to go out and do some member outreach. Perhaps some additional opportunities will pop up for employer outreach as well, because it's springtime and they start doing MASBO starts doing their regional meetings. So typically we'll get invited to a webinar. I also recently collected information from our new auditor, Chris Fish, who you heard from last fall. We thought it would be silly for us not to capitalize on the findings that she's documenting in those audits. So she put some kind of representative samples into a folder, and I've actually had Jen looking at that too, just for learning. As you can imagine, anything to do with TRS is a very long learning curve. So, and one thing I forgot to mention is Jen's working on a video. John L. Sedlock had said it would be great if we could do a webinar on how to fill out the retirement packet.
I think that's
And I said,
awesome.
instead of a webinar, why don't we make a durable resource like a video? So Jen's been working on that. It's talk
People
about
get that
throwing
packet
it.
and they're overwhelmed.
Right, and talk about a complex topic to throw a new employee into.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She's learning all kinds of deep stuff that takes a lot to kind of absorb how it all works together, so.
So
Working on
coming
that.
from, can I ask a question now?
Absolutely.
So coming from the IT world, so when you say you're gonna create that video, are you gonna have like a backup plan for someone that doesn't understand that as well? Like the formatting, MP4, is it gonna be easy? You
We,
won't do it on your phone, computer?
absolutely.
Okay.
We have a lot of, excuse me, software tools, including some that Jen had experience with that I didn't. So she's got various tools. We have an animation software that we just
Yeah,
want to
that's what I was
renew.
getting at.
We've got, she has been using Canva. We have a
Oh,
paid subscription to that. So, and then we have a YouTube channel. So all of the videos are hosted for free on YouTube. And so,
yep.
yeah, that's,
Perfect.
you can watch that on.
Well, not me, I don't do YouTube, but that's okay. I'm old.
Yeah, this meeting is being recorded. That's
Is
gonna
on
be on
YouTube,
YouTube.
yeah.
It'll be there tomorrow.
Everybody watches it.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. No, actually, the views on that are surprisingly high. It's interesting. Okay, so as far as back to the member outreach activities, and that's another part of, to answer your question, this video is certainly not the only thing. Our active team, the benefit officers especially, are in almost constant contact with people who they're actually filling out that application and working. So it's almost never a completely hands-off process. There's a lot of education. We do these presentations, TRS 101, Retirement System Basics is the first one that I typically give. And then Jonelle and her team do the Ready, Set, Retire, which is more geared to that. We have people that attend that 5, 6, 7 years in a row because it's so much. And so there is a lot of resources. Those sessions are recorded and also available on YouTube, linked on our website. So they are, I just looked yesterday, the Ready, Set, Retire one, the newest version's only been up for 2 months, and it was at 99 views yesterday. And TRS 101 was at 91, I think. So by the time we get the next year's versions out there, they're usually 500 or 600 views a piece. So
That's good.
let's see, we had done webinars. We've been doing that the past few years, of course, starting with COVID year. But those continue to be popular. The benefit officers travel out to usually about 6 places every year. This past fall, it was Whitefish, Eureka, Wolf Point, Haverview, and Dillon. However, we did not have Kim to help us yet, so we were kind of flying solo, trying to get the word out to the school districts with limited success in that. It's just, we don't have the email lists and the ability to contact members directly like MFPE does. So the attendance was pretty low at those. And that was disappointing, but the webinars were pretty good. So we do issue one OPI renewal unit for those. I manage that. That works pretty well now that we've got the process down. You heard Sean mention the member survey. It's on the strategic plan to do that every 2 years. Of course, as he mentioned, we focus it on trying to verify whether or not the claims were true, that teachers would really prefer a DC plan, and that's not at all what we heard. We kind of suspected that was the case, but that's how it came out. The Horizons newsletter, per our schedule, we do 2 issues in a legislative year and only 1 in non-legislative years. And that was triggered a couple of years ago as I was trying to prepare a spring issue, must have been 2022, there just wasn't really anything to talk about. And we thought, why spend the money if there's no real reason for it? So we just sort of permanently changed the schedule. And it works out better for legislative planning and so forth. So if especially you new members, if you want to go to our website, trs.mt.gov, right at the top of the homepage is a link to both our survey results and the newsletter, the last issue, which was a holiday issue. But the main article in that newsletter is just kind of a summary of that survey. So we mentioned the Alaska experience, so might be a good thing to review. And then, of course, forms, fact sheets, correspondence, and web content takes up a lot of my time. So Jen will be helpful when she kind of gets up to speed on understanding how TRS works, which is difficult for anyone. She will be probably exposed to a lot more of that kind of, I call that the mundane work of this role. I'm kind of here to do some of the more fun and useful to our members. So it's all useful, but some of this I would consider it more internal stuff, devising new forms of fact sheets, revising old ones. Anytime there's a legislative change, there is a whole bunch of stuff that has to be updated, whether it's on the web or a form or a fact sheet or other documents. And so I work closely with both Tammy and Denise on those things. And then as far as technology, this is kind of unique because I originally was a contractor here on the M-Trust project. I'm still involved a fair amount in those kinds of things. So I participated with John on a work group about a year ago now, where the state was considering that e-signature agreement. So they ultimately formed a contract with DocuSign in June. We were not actually even able to access it until November, so we're just getting our feet wet. You all signed your, we did, little form. You were kind of the pilot group, so that was great. But as Sean alluded to, they offer some identity verification add-on services, and now the question is, can it be tacked on just for us, or would all agencies have to agree? There's some questions still being worked out, but like Sean said, it's looking like it's definitely a possibility. And I think when people hear DocuSign, they think just e-signature, but that's a fraction of what the tool can do. So they have, for example, you can make a web form. It's all based on a paper form that's a template, a PDF document. You pull that in, you can make a web form that can be viewed on your phone. So we've been playing around with some little ideas, such as the ability for someone on the website to report a death. That's something we've been kind of considering. So things like that, and you would use DocuSign as the final thing. They would sign that form and submit it to us. So lots of possibilities there. And Sean mentioned finally automating that final step of the online withdrawal. That's probably goal number 1.
If I could say something, I think that DocuSign is a real step forward for all of us, because it's been used in business for years, and I'm glad that government is finally catching up. It's a good tool.
Thank you, I agree. The whole goal, I think, of the initial enterprise agreement that was signed last year, I'm not on the inside of that negotiation process, but the message we all got as work group members was, how can we get state agencies to embrace it, being able to digitize things and make things more accessible to the public. We, of course, don't serve the public, but same idea. So I think we have a lot of ideas, getting it in place, the infrastructure, setting up all the sharing of templates and where do they go after they get completed. All that sort of background information is complicated, and so I'm kind of, I guess, heading that up, for lack of a better way to put it. So I'll be working closely with the management team and staff to get some of that put in place and figure out how the workflow behind it all works. So I guess with that, I'll let you ask questions of us, or if you have any questions for Jen, or if she wants to say anything.
Have either of you checked out our website? Have you had a chance to do that?
I have,
Yeah.
I've been through it a few times, but I haven't really paid attention to how it works. It seems easy enough for me, but.
Right. I think the big thing you'll notice, and if you were to go look at that dnrc.mt.gov site, I'm about ready to send a staff survey to just get their input on what they think needs to change. But if our site is fine the way it is, but it was built 10 or 11 years ago
Right
when
before.
sort of a fixed width static
Right.
design
Yep.
was common. So it can't shrink. It can't adjust to the size of your device. So that's gonna have to be a consideration as we go forward with some of these online processes that would require a member or an employer to log into the systems the reporting systems and the My TRS system. So though, at this point, we're focusing just on a public website, but that will help once we get to developing online processes, whether it's using DocuSign or building something into the system itself, or a combination of the two. It needs to be able to be used on an iPad or a phone or something. We can't roll out a bunch of online processes and make it difficult unless you have a giant monitor. So that would not be very
You haven't
a
looked
good
at
user
like
experience.
app, you haven't looked at like an app service, like just having a TRS app or.
It would, the same problem would exist. We'd still have to build
Right.
whatever.
It's created, right, but it hasn't been brought up or discussed or
No.
future-wise anyway.
Probably not. I don't know for sure, but it's something that, if we can make the underlying site responsive, then that would
Right.
be the app. And they have to
Right,
log in
yeah,
anyway.
that's
So,
where most of them are going now, thanks to. that
I mean, it's
eliminates
possible, but,
That eliminates the discernment of private information that way.
right, but we still have to tie to our database,
Right.
so it's. I
It's
don't
all in the
know.
cloud now, I assume? No one's got mechanicals in the building?
John will have to speak to that. It's all hosted by SITSD, so.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm certainly not the expert on that, but there's other questions or comments about this is sort of a summary of everything we've done in the last, I think my last report was about 10 months ago, so, and a little bit of looking forward, so.
We're excited to have you on board.
Thank you. Yeah, excited to be here. A lot of cool stuff ahead.
It's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. A lot of bridges to cross.
Yeah, I told her I've been juggling balls, and if you could pick those that have fallen under the
Yeah.
file cover, that'd be great.
That we've asked her to do, but she's like, no way.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. This is another opportunity for public comment. I will always ask, so you don't have to. We're a little bit ahead of time, and I know that our next one is Dan Villa, so should we
Yes.
just take the break and,
So he will be here about 10, planning to give his presentation at 10:15, so we could do that. Take the break and then pick up with him at 10.
sure.
I can do this piece of it. I mean, I don't know if we want to do any of this.
Oh, yeah, or legal counsel or applications, I didn't know if you wanted to jump ahead.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to. I was thinking maybe we can bump up some of those things.
I'm fine with either.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could do the one that Tammy pointed out, which is agenda item 8. That'll only take a couple minutes, and then maybe we take a 15-minute break, and then Dan said he would be here at 10. I'll text him and make sure that he's gonna be here at 10.
Yeah. All right, Tammy, let's do that real quick.
Okay, sounds good.
That
Madam
ahead.
Chair, members of the board, in your packet, the information that you have on the desk that was not provided in the electronic version is a copy of the retirements that happened from November 1st through, November 1st through,
What tab is that?
8,
I'll tell you the page,
Tab
behind 8.
8, yes.
it's page 41.
Okay.
So we had 51 individuals that retired with an average term pay of a little over $4,800. Average monthly benefit a little over $1,100, and average age of 61.65 with average years of service of 15.10. I will explain for, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I looked back at the last report that we had, it was 17. Is this kind of just a general range, kind of like the previous situation where
Yeah.
1.3 million is not a big deal?
Right,
Between
right.
15 and 20 is kind of a range? Or?
Well, no, so our busiest time of the year is June and July. Retirees, you'll see, I mean, we retire roughly a little over 600 a year. The bulk of those retirements are in June and July. The fall is always our, slower time of the year, although we really truly don't have a slow time any longer like we used to. But yes, so it's in the fall, it's kind of, it kind of varies, but it's slower in the fall compared to the summer months. And just to kind of explain to you and Member Youngren what the information on the report actually stands for. The under employer type, COOP, stands for cooperatives. SCDI is school districts, and then university is UNIB. And then the grand total at the bottom on page 43 tells you the information that I just communicated that was in Sean's write-up for the board packet. Any questions?
Thank you, Deb. And that's more of an information item as well, to just kind of be able to see how many we're processing and et cetera. All right, so let's take a break until 10 o'clock, and then we'll be back. Well, welcome, Mr. Villa. Thank you for coming today.
You bet. Thank you all. For your records, I'm Dan Villa. I'm the Director of your Board of Investments, here to do our annual statutory touch base, let you know how your money's going, but it's always an odd thing because we're meeting in February about results for last July and the entire universe has changed since then. But it's what the code says, so it's what we'll do. If you go to page 2, you'll see the strategic asset allocation of the board. This is the #1 driver of our returns. Last year, as you remember, we had the 8.5. We did not make any recommendations to changes in the asset allocation, and the board affirmed the current ranges. So we are still within these. I think you're seeing generally within the market great movements within domestic equities. Our fiscal year to date is 5.08. So your January sheet had us at 4.2. So it was a good February. Thematically, I think you can continue to see us moving into those illiquids as time goes on, more in private investments, real assets, real estate. Core fixed income's in a great place right now. STIP yields at about 5.36 for February, so very happy with that. Short-term cash being at that rate, the bond pool will continue to grow. Trust fund participants are loving it right now. We're buying at these rates and rolling off the 2% bonds, so it's a good time to be in the bond market, but also strong equity performance. Don't know what, I mean, there's a lot going on geopolitically. There's an election, there's Fed rates, there is earnings season, so we are taking a little off the table in domestic equities, capturing some of that run in order to meet benefit payments, but leaves us fully invested everywhere else and plenty of liquidity within the portfolio to meet our capital calls in the illiquids, which, as you remember, are our highest yielding asset classes. The next slide, you'll see past performance. As I said, 8.46 for teachers. Since inception, 7.72. Every interim, it seems like for the last 10 years, we've had the legislature studying the pension systems, and every interim for the last 20 years, there's been an assertion that we won't meet the actuarial hurdle. I think the short circuit in all of that is you all perform an actuarial analysis annually, and if you need to adjust, you adjust before we get behind that 8 ball. So you're doing your job very well from the board's perspective. You're giving us good data. We're building a portfolio to meet your expectations. So generally, as you see in your funded ratios and the rates of return, we are meeting our obligations to you. On the next slide, this is just the general assets under management. This is our big, how much overall do we manage and in what pools? As you remember, we've got 4 pools. We've got CAP, Consolidated Asset Pension Pool that you participate in, as well as all of the Impera systems. We've got the Trust Fund Investment Pool. We have the STIP pool, and then we have separately managed accounts. Those would be things like your environmental settlements in Libby and Butte, Anaconda, Missoula, along the Clark Fork. Those would be your historical society, trust funds, those assets which have specific dedicated purposes behind them, including the Montana State Fund. So as you can see, we're up around $27.5 billion in AUM. As I always like to remind people, the more assets under management the board has, the lower everyone's fees are. Our maximums are set by the statute, so the more assets we have, the less of a haircut everybody takes to meet those obligations. And I'll touch on fees at the very end. Investment goals and strategies, nothing has changed. Nothing to revisit on an annual basis with our long-term perpetual fund outlook. The next slide, you've seen this before. It will be updated this year. One more forward. This is our CEM report. The board is happy to be the most audited entity in state government. We not only have the legislative audit for financial and compliance audits, we also bring in a SOC auditor, so that tests our internal controls to make sure that the assets are safe. We also bring in this firm's CEM benchmarking, who measures our performance and costs versus our peers, and identifies areas where we can go better. I think there's 2 ways to look at audits: gotcha, or as a tool. And CEM is very much a tool for us, that as we see areas where we can improve, we do so. So one of the things that we identified in the last CEM audit was we were paying a bit more than we should have in the high yield compared to the market. So we renegotiated all of our high yield bond managers down. We put one on a performance fee measurement, and the other ones we got about 100 basis points in fee savings. So, this is a tool for us. We don't specifically track every other participant in the public sector pension world. That's their job, but we bring them in on a regular basis to measure how we do and where we can improve. If you look at the next slide, you'll see the takeaways. Our 5-year total return was 11.4, which beat our peers, and our 5-year was 10.9, which also beat our peers. Our implementation costs were about half, or were slightly below. Implementation cost is what it costs you to make the money. Was 20 bips below, or 2 bips below our peers. And you can see down below the very last bullet, and I think this one warrants some conversation. Despite being 3.9 bips above the benchmark cost, we delivered 263.6 basis points of implementation impact. So what that's saying is that for the 3.9 bips in additional costs we see over our peers, we yield 263.6 basis points above what our peers would have realized. So this is where being good capitalists come in handy. If you're able to get access to the best managers, they're going to charge you more. So we can reduce fees, but we won't get, that's 263 bips will dissipate as we frankly go for more of a cost containment as opposed to performance. So we don't necessarily mind paying those 4 additional bips for 2.6% in additional return from it. And the last slide, as I always like to touch on, are fees as a proportion of assets. 0.27%. We are by far the best deal you'll get. STIP is, in the fixed income portfolio is one of our shining stars, very low cost, very high implementation outcomes. I think in years, on a go-forward basis, given the new assets of the board, trying to figure out what this looks like. So for instance, we got, the legislature put about $100 million in housing funds with us. We'll be billing against those assets in addition to all of the other assets we have. So I'm hopeful that we can use those to reduce our overall costs or continue to push hard on how we not only pay for the services we need through private investment managers, custodial banks, things like wire fees and the like. But overall, very happy with the trend lines on costs, and we'll continue to push that. With that, happy to answer any questions.
We always like it when you're here with really good news, so thank you.
Me too.
So what is the rest of the fiscal year look like between now and June? June 30th is an important day for us.
Yeah, you start texting me around May. What's it at today? What's it at today? Couple of things. The market believes the Fed is going to start reducing rates. Whether that's in March or later, will have an impact on that STIP portfolio in the medium term. How the market responds to it, if they move too quickly, if inflation doesn't seem to be under control or they have to hold higher longer, that'll have a significant impact on the domestic equity portfolio. The private investments world, we're seeing some pretty decent sized capital calls, so there's some opportunity in the marketplace that the managers are identifying. High yield bonds are doing relatively well. We have a pretty conservative approach on how we take the high yield bonds. As you see this market distress, those tend to do better, but we don't really get into the, triple B, C level of bonds where you've really seen outperformance. Do we want to risk the higher, is the higher default risk worth the return? And so far we've used it as a hedge against sort of regular fixed income and overall accretive to the portfolio. From a positioning standpoint, we're about as well positioned as we could be. We've had a good run in domestic equities to meet benefits without getting outside of the ranges. Fixed income still strong and looks to be strong, at least for the next 60 to 90 days, depending on what the Fed does. And then, real estate, you may have seen a lot in real estate. We are underweight I don't want to say underweight, we don't really assign weights to them, but our exposures to commercial real estate in those urban centers is less than what we would have anticipated. We've sold some of that off early. So we're into more specialized real estate like grocery anchored, commercial, everybody's got to eat, as well as getting into more specialized like data centers, cold storage, sort of those very specific asset types in growing areas. It's kind of hard to make the investment thesis in a Portland and a Chicago, in a Los Angeles and a New York, but in a Nashville or a Charlotte, pretty easy these days.
I guess probably the first time in 20 years that I've been exposed to some people asking the types of things where, how comfortable are you about your private equity? Now, I have always said we don't invest. I don't have to answer that question. I'll send you where to go. But I know that the state of Montana, if I'm correct, we have an actual law stating that we can't consider like environmental types of things or all of those. We're just in it for the fiduciary.
Correct.
Okay.
We follow the money. We don't go green in the context of we're going to go chase solar panels to change the world. We go green in that if that solar panel firm can deliver 15% results versus another firm that's at 10, we'll go with them. So we have oil, we have timber, we have aggregates, we have alternative energy sources. We chase the yield, and that's mandated by the Constitution and reaffirmed last session by statute.
Okay. It helps me answer questions.
Anything else? I'll just keep sending the money over.
He doesn't have any questions? Dee, you can still hear us, right?
I can. I have a lot of questions, but I'll talk to you when I'm face to face.
Okay, I didn't want you to let Director Bill off that easy.
Well, I have some questions of him too, but you and I will talk, Sean. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for your time.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Throw this in your office.
Yeah, that works.
All right, so.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Sean, one question I do have that maybe you'll have to do a little bit of homework. I'd like to see the fees that we have paid the Board of Investments over time, like say a 5-year period, a 10-year period, because I know one of the slides from Dan was looking at the percentage rate of return. And I would like to know the percentage of fees.
So, yes, Nolan and I can definitely do that. So the one slide, let me share my screen again with you. The one slide that he had in the deck there shows the investment fee ratio for the last 5 years. Just a second, it's gonna take me a minute to move things back around here. And then, here, so that should hold true across the whole portfolio, but we can get you the exact.
It's not.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. That's because I didn't select it, share. Okay, so now can you see this chart, Dee?
I can, yes, yeah.
Okay, so that's across the whole portfolio that BOI is investing, which would be the retirement funds plus the other trust funds. And this fee ratio should be pretty darn close, but I mean, we can get you the exact percentage for TRS assets only, because Nolan does put that in the act for every
Actually,
year.
I guess I didn't explain myself well enough. I wanted to know how much the fee has been percentage-wise paid to the Board of Investments to invest our money.
So not the asset managers, just the Board of Investments?
Well, I guess I don't know. Can you clarify? So these costs would be our total investment costs, which would include the external managers. Are you talking about just the Board of Investment fees?
Just the Board of Investments, yeah.
Okay, so those are gonna be much, much lower. We can get you those numbers. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
I didn't phrase it right. That's why. Thank you.
All right, so this is another opportunity for public comment. I have to offer it. You can just go. And then we'll jump into legal counsel.
All right, this will be quick, Madam Chair, members of the board. We have no contested cases pending currently, and we always hope to keep it that way. In the board minutes and from the last board meeting there, I provided you information on one contested case matter. No, I shouldn't say that. It's not a contested case. A final determination, staff determination that we issued to a school district who did not respond. And then the question is, if they're just not going to respond to us, what do we do with that case? Well, in reality, it's likely that their board never got official notice of that issue being brought to them. We're going to reissue the final staff determination, make sure the board gets served with that determination, and they have an opportunity to deal with it internally before we do anything further on that.
That's the school board, right?
School board, correct. Yep. Just very quickly, our process for issues with members, this was a reporting issue, whether a position is required to be reported to TRS with contributions remitted by the by the school district. We issue the determination to the member and the school district, but when we get no satisfactory response from them, then we kick it up a notch to the Board of Trustees, the school district Board of Trustees. We did that with the final staff determination, but again, it was by email to their board chair, and the email came back as undeliverable, so we're not sure that the board has received notice of the issue at this point, so. Other than that, I don't have anything else to discuss. We haven't issued any more preliminary determinations. We did have one additional preliminary determination that we had, a preliminary determination that we had issued, and the person is actually requested to come directly to the board and have the conversation, but of course we'll respond, and the answer is you have nothing to take action on until we've developed a case, and so we will handle that. You'll be hearing about that probably at the next board meeting.
FYI, it's good when Denise doesn't have anything, because we've had cases that have gone on for 9 years. So, you know, very long periods of time that are difficult. So we're glad when she doesn't have those extra job duties. All right, let's jump ahead then to the long-range planning, which should be behind tab 9, yeah.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, so behind tab 9 in your hard packet is our strategic planning commitment worksheet. And so for our new member, I'll talk a little bit about the strategic planning that the board does. So every other year, we do at our August meeting sort of full-on strategic planning, where we spend at least a half a day, if not a little bit more than half a day, looking at what we've accomplished, what we want to accomplish in the next 2-year period at a minimum, and sometimes those goals are even longer. They're 5, 6, 7 years out, and we document those in our strategic planning commitment worksheet, which is what you have in front of you here. I update this worksheet prior to each board meeting. When we meet this coming August, it's not a full-on strategic planning session, but it's certainly a time when we will spend more time on our current 23-25 commitment worksheet, and we will reprioritize if necessary, or we will add things if necessary, but we won't utilize the services of Jim Cairns at CMA for that meeting. It's just we will do it ourselves internally. So usually I put in red font, I gotta see, yeah. So I'll just kind of step through this so that Mr. Youngren is aware of kind of some of the things that we're looking at in this current 2-year period, if not further out. So our first goal and objective there is maintain an actual sound qualified retirement plan, which would include periodic tax qualification reviews. So we do that every 5 years. Our last one was conducted in fiscal year 21, so our next review won't take place until 2026. But we do want to keep track of that, so we keep it on here. In the meantime, Denise certainly keeps track of any changing federal requirements at the IRS level, both on our own research as well as relying to some degree on our tax counsel, which is Ice Miller. The second one there is actively participate in the interim study. This current biennium, that's SJ4. I spoke at length about that this morning in my executive director's report. That's something that's currently underway. Every 4 years, we conduct an experience study, which looks at our actual experience from the previous 5 years, and then also melds in projections looking forward. And that experience study is for actuarial purposes. So it's an actuarial experience study where our actuary will conduct an experience study. They will develop any changes to our assumptions that as far as recommendations to the board, and then the board ultimately is the one with constitutional authority to change those assumptions. So you would listen to their recommendation, have a discussion amongst yourself, and then you would implement those changes through board action. So our next experience study would occur based on the July 1, 2025 results. So not this July, but next July, and you won't actually see that completed report until May of 2026. So any changes that are implemented by the board at that time would go into effect for the July 1, 2026 fiscal year. So high performance work culture and service excellence. You've heard a little bit, our pension administration system is called mTrust. It really drives all the calculations. It keeps track of all the contributions, the service credit, so on and so forth. I mean, it's really our sort of lifeblood here at TRS. Everything is in that system. And then part of that system is developing out some automated and improved processes. And so we have an enhancement budget that the board approves every May to continue to make mTrust even better than it is as it stands today. That work, I can tell you, we're 10 years into. We had a few phased build outs to update that system. It used to be built on Cold Fusion. You know, nobody could even there were hardly any developers even use that. It's now completely web-based. We'll give you a chance to look at it this afternoon. Elliot had a chance to look at it at his last meeting. But anyway, it's a much more modern system, but there's constantly things that we can do better, or regulations change. We've had several tax changes that have been necessary due to IRS changes in regulations, as well as state of Montana tax changes. So it's something that never goes away. We have to continue to invest in that system because it's really how we do our work every day. And then, you know, looking further down the road, automating things and making them completely electronic transactions is ultimately what we want to do in some spaces, such as the online withdrawal, which is already out there, minus the physical.
And online withdrawals,
that's for people that are no longer working, they're not vested, they don't have 5 or more years of service credit, so their only option is to withdraw their contributions.
oh, so that's just a one-time,
That's a one-time,
okay.
yes. However, you know, that's mostly built, other than the signature piece, which we'll get to pretty easily, I think. But then down the road, we would like to be able to have the whole retirement application be a completely online process that you could do on your iPhone if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Android.
Or yeah, Android. Yeah, either way. It's one of those guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so then, yeah, the next one there is the implement online retirement application. I think we just talked about that. Darla spoke to a responsive web design that is going to be underway and should be done for sure next fiscal year, if not at least started before the end of this fiscal year. The next one on the top of page 2 of the strategic planning is continue business process and workflow improvements while building online processes. That's all sort of goes hand in hand with building out those online transactions, and with DocuSign, there's going to be some workflow diagramming and sort of laying it all out so that the right people get notified at the right times as those things step through the process. So that's all going to be, they're all sort of tied to one another. Develop procedural documentation for each team. That would be desk manuals. This is ongoing. We do a lot of, I would say most of our contemporary work has been in the areas of fact sheets for various topics like working after retirement, terminating employment, those kinds of things that all staff have access to. Now that we have 2 communications employees, we may be able to get to a point where we can write up more job-specific procedures or desk manuals. But that work is sort of kind of always ongoing. The actual desk manuals, we have not started on those. We have existing desk manuals that are tied to our old pension system that we don't utilize anymore. So some of the why still matters, but the how you do it is obviously doesn't work. With that said, our new system has built-in online help, so you can type a question into mTrust and it will take you to the various areas that give you an explanation of how to do something. So it is built in some ways right in the system itself. Oh, let's see. So then the next one on the list is continue with formal strategic planning every 2 years. Our next formal planning, we'll do a review of this whole thing, not just the commitment worksheet, but the actual strategic plan itself, which is a separate document. We'll look at it this August, but we won't really do full planning until August of 25. Maintain best practices, system security, and identity verification essentially is what this boils down to. And like I spoke about earlier today, I think we're making good progress on that. And I hope to be able to say that we have online withdrawals ironed out, early next fiscal year, because we'll need the budget for some of those costs. But I think that DocuSign is not going to be cost prohibitive. So I think it'll definitely be something we want to move forward with. Succession planning, that's ongoing. We do have a few key staff members that are retirement eligible. Depending on which job we're looking to fill, we may or may not have internal capacity to fill that position. To the extent we do have internal capacity, we will do cross-training and knowledge transfer to the degree possible. There are certain positions, though, that you can't do that. If Denise decides to retire, I need an actual attorney. I can't have Nolan do it for us. So it just depends on the job.
John wants the job.
Yeah, John would make a great lawyer. He just needs to go to
That's his way of
school.
saying we
That
both
sounds
talk
like a
a
shot.
lot, John, yeah.
Good shot, but it sounds like a shot.
Yeah. The last one on that page is maintain TRS pay plan to keep it current with contemporary practices and markets. That is ongoing. The TRS board has been very supportive of making sure that we are paying our people, at least at the midpoint. There has been, the last few years, an adoption of a new broadband pay plan that has made our life a little bit more difficult because they kind of changed where the goalposts are at on the field. But we are tracking in the right direction, and I think we're doing pretty well with that. That's something that the personnel committee meets with myself and Deputy Director Rao on each prior to the May meeting, because any changes that we're asking for that aren't just strictly statutory changes are approved by the board at that meeting. Okay, on the final page, first one there is coordinate executive director and board member attendance at school superintendent meetings in non-legislative years. So those meetings are all scheduled for this spring. I will take a look and make sure that, I believe Elliot probably will attend the mass meeting in your area. I can't say.
I'll be running it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, he will definitely.
Yep, I will be there.
You'll be there.
But when I do get out up to the Flathead, I usually let the board members that are up there know. I'll let you know when we're scheduled to meet for your area. Board members are certainly welcome to attend those meetings. It's a good way for me to get out there and talk about any new changes that were, approved during the last legislative session. Like, for example, these meetings I'll be going to this spring, I'm going to be talking at length about changes we made to independent contractor statutes that all schools will have to implement starting this July 1st. That's going to come probably as a surprise to some of them, but I think we have that ironed out to where it won't be too much of a lift for them to conduct the analysis that they'll need to do. And we can talk more at length about why we thought those changes were necessary, but it was something that the TRS board approved us moving forward with legislation last session, and that did get passed. Continue external communications. Darla spoke to this. This is our staff going to MASBO events, myself going to these superintendent events, as well as our benefit officers conducting retirement seminars. So that is always ongoing and underway. A lot of these, if you notice, are communication related, which is part of why it was very important for us to hire a second staff member. There's a lot of work surrounding these communication items. The next one was continue to promote communication with members about system functions, improvements, processes, and transactions. So when we do roll out something like online withdrawals, that's something that Darla puts in our newsletter that every member receives, and that, so everyone is at least aware that it's a possibility that you can go do that. As we continue to build out more items, we will notify our membership certainly about those. Continue member surveys. We just completed the most recent one in October 2023. We'll do the next survey in 2025. We'll take a look at that survey this afternoon just so you can see some of the questions we asked and the responses we received. The next one is promote the system as a benefit to help school districts attract and retain teachers. That's certainly one of the things I talk about when I'm out doing those regional superintendent meetings is, they really need to view our retirement, the teacher's retirement, as part of the compensation package. It's deferred compensation. There's a lot of teachers that stick it out an extra 5 years or 10 years longer than they would have for that deferred compensation. So it certainly helps retain employees, and even based on the survey we sent out, even brand new teachers, it's one of the reasons that they go into it, is they know that there is a defined benefit, which outside of government, private sector companies I think there's only something like 30% of them offer a defined benefit anymore. So they're pretty much all defined contribution. And then you already heard that we have Jen on staff. She's still here. She's sitting back there. She hasn't left yet.
She hasn't ran.
So we hired her in December 18th. And then the last one there is research available options for TRS to support or promote a deferred compensation system, so this would be supplemental savings for them. And Impera manages, it's called the 457 Deferred Comp Plan. My understanding is school districts can access that if they choose to. A lot of school districts don't do that, or they utilize a different company. And based on our survey results, a lot of teachers, at least the ones that responded, aren't aware if their employer offers one or not. So this is something I'm going to put some information together for, and at least talk to the superintendents about. It can be a little difficult to do much with that, like in the newsletter, because then people get confused. Are they in a defined contribution plan, or are they in a defined benefit plan? And it can cause all kinds of problems. I think it needs to come from that superintendent level, them recognizing it's important to at least provide them the option for that additional savings, and then to communicate to their employees that it's available. So I'm going to try to drive it from that perspective this spring.
John, I have a question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Dee.
Oh, okay. I want to know, Sean, has there ever been a study done about what I call short-term superintendents? They are a principal for, 25 years, and then they jump to be the superintendent for 3 years, and then they get compensated at a much greater rate for being a short-term superintendent. Have we done a study on that?
So, Member Brown, we have statute that protects the system for that very reason. It's called the 110% cap on earnings. So for somebody, it doesn't matter if they're a teacher that goes to a principal or a principal that goes to a superintendent, if their compensation jumps more than 10% per year, it's capped at that 10% unless they do it for 4 years or more. So have we done a study on like recent activity? I would say no, but that certainly was part of what was looked at when that statute was first implemented, was to protect the system from salary spiking. I can tell you there's some other sort of unintended consequences to that are people that are part-time and their salaries are annualized. They're also subject to that 10% cap. So you have people that are making pretty low wages, but if they jump more than 10%, they need to do it for at least 4 years in order for that cap to be negated for calculation of their average final compensation.
And that's for tier one, right?
That's for
two
tier
would
one,
be
for
6
tier
years.
year, yeah, for tier two, somebody hired after July 1, 2013, since we use 5 years for average final compensation, they would have to do that new job for 6 years in order to negate that 10% cap.
Thank you.
I guess I would love to just share with you all that this strategic planning commitment worksheet drives, for example, how we evaluate Sean. It drives the direction that the board, really all of our meetings, what kinds of things we're looking to do in the future. It does not, well, and it does. It definitely drives day-to-day work, requirements of the board or of the employees, but not we're not telling everybody how to do their job. This is more of a broad thing with Sean and Denise and our communications director so that we have a general idea of which direction we're going. It's been very, very helpful. And then when I go to, I sit on the personnel committee. So when we go to evaluate Sean, we have very distinct things that we're looking at, along with surveys that we do from the board members and surveys that we do from the staff, etc. And then I also just wanted to say, because I thought maybe you would be interested, but the M-Trust is really an interesting system that we've created.
Well, if he shows it to me, I'm gonna get curious in a hurry.
Well, what's interesting is that really it was built from the ground up here for us, and based out of the fact that we've always had one that was built around us, and then it was just out of tune with where we were going. And so it's been quite a process, and many years, lots of Tammy's time, lots of time from a lot of staff members to get exactly what we need. So it'll be interesting for you to see. Yeah. Any other questions about that?
All right, that concludes my update.
Your update on that. All right. So that's the long-range planning in portion. Now we'll jump into, Denise will do a board training for us on privacy and security of our personal information. Oh, let me ask for public comment. All right. One public person, just raise your hand.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, most board meetings we have a topic of board education around one of our policies. You missed the really fun one last board meeting, so.
What was that one that I missed?
Ethics,
Oh, I did
compliance,
miss that
yeah. So you're free for
a year anyway.
one. Right here.
All of our policies are available out on our website though, and you should, certainly feel free to look through those because they all do pertain to, yeah, exactly.
It should still be ethical, even if you
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah.
So
Learned all that.
the policy on privacy and security of personal information comes directly from state statute, the cross-reference. So I'm on page 50 of the board packet here. On page 53, the cross-reference specifies the provisions in state law that pertain to, private information, essentially, personally identifiable information. And for purposes of this policy, essentially, personal information is a first name or a first initial with a last name combined with any of the data elements listed on page 50. So a social security number, a different tax identification number, an identity protection, personal identification number issued by the IRS, a driver's license number, an identification number.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, you bet.
I think
You
your
wanna know?
numbers might be different than.
So it
Page
should be
15?
behind tab 10 in your workbook.
Oh,
and-
this list.
Yes.
There you
Oh,
go.
she said
I saw-
53, so I was reading this.
Oh, yeah, no, it's-
Oh, you're
There you
good.
go. Yeah. I saw you looking at the wrong.
You're-
Oh.
No, you're good.
No, I'm sorry, so, an identification number issued by any state, the District of Columbia, or any of our, territories, an account number or credit or debit card number in combination with any required security code, access code, or password that would permit access to a person's financial account. I will tell you, we consider it, personal information if all we have is the account number, and we do have, of course, bank account numbers for direct deposit of benefits and that sort of thing. We wouldn't wait to have a PIN number to consider that to be personal information or protected information, or certainly medical record information. And we do have medical record information. We're not HIPAA governed, but we do have medical record information on our members who apply for disability retirement benefits, and that information is handled essentially as if we are a HIPAA entity, covered entity. So the policy on private information is, so I'm on page 51 now, and the policy provisions. So the first, number one, is sort of the what and why of the information that we gather, and of course we do. We gather a large amount of private information. We do have driver's licenses of our, photocopies of our driver's licenses of retirees. Everybody who's going to get a benefit has to provide picture identification. Of course, we gather social security numbers. We have to have those for both identification of members and beneficiaries and for tax reporting purposes. So we have to, frankly, gather that information. We gather, I won't go through the whole list, but I mean, clearly TRS has information that's very sensitive personal information. We gather and maintain the information and use it only as appropriate to manage the business operations of the retirement system. We don't use it or disclose it for any other purpose. State law prohibits this, but of course we don't provide, customer lists. I mean, we don't provide, names and addresses of our members for any kind of mailing purposes.
We do get asked for that.
Yeah, we do.
For demographic information?
For mailing lists of members, even from other state agencies and that sort of thing. And we can't statutorily provide it, but we wouldn't, even if there wasn't a statute prohibiting it.
Why are they asking, right, like?
It could be insurance companies, financial advisors. I mean, they're wanting a distribution list.
Right.
I mean, and even sometimes it could be, we've had requests that even from MFPE, and we have to tell them, unfortunately, no, we can't provide it. I mean,
at one point, we had requests from the governor's office for the names and addresses of our retirees so they could send congratulations messages to our
yeah, so it
retirees.
varies.
Yeah.
Usually it's commercial, but.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's congratulatory.
Yeah.
We still don't.
And we still don't give it out. Under number 3, it specifies, and typically if you're familiar with privacy laws and that sort of thing, you have to limit your staff access to personal information to those people who need to have it to perform specific duties and functions. We are a very small organization, and the reality is pretty much all of our staff here has access to member data in the mTrust system. Security levels, of course, are set within the system, and everybody doesn't have access to everything, but all of our staff get trained on this policy and the requirements as well. Because of our size, everybody essentially has access to social security numbers, potentially bank account numbers, certainly names, addresses, birth dates, that sort of thing. In gathering our information, we only request complete social security numbers where we have a need to have the complete social security number. For our members first coming into the system, of course, we have to have complete social security numbers. That's for identification purposes. As people move from employer to employer, we know we're dealing with the same person because of their social security number more than because of their name. On most of our forms, though, beyond the initial processes for withdrawals, we require a full social security number. On retirement applications, we require a full social security number again to ensure that we're dealing with the correct person. Our other forms, if we can match the person based on a truncated social security number, that's all we ask for, the last 4 of the SSN. Number 5 deals with the reasons that we might make disclosures to third parties. We have a number of people, our actuaries for one, our mTrust administrative people, Alfred Monksgard and Associates for another, who have access to or to whom we would disclose or make available the private information of our members. We only do that if that third-party agent, person who's performing duties or functions in the operations of the retirement system, has a need to have that information or have access to that information based on the duties and functions they're performing. Any other release of protected personally identifiable information is only done if we have an authorization for release of information to the person. We have a form for that, or there is another legal documentary authorization to disclose the information, like a power of attorney, if somebody has a power of attorney, or for a legal reason, if information is subpoenaed through a legal process, that sort of thing, then we can disclose the information. In 7 deals with releasing information that includes social security numbers. Interestingly, now we have our state email system stops us unless it's in an attachment. It can be tricky, but I mean, internally staff know we don't email social security. It won't let you. It will not let you put a social security number in the body of the outgoing email.
Yeah.
That's different than incoming email. We have people, including attorneys, who email us people's social security numbers all the time, and it makes me crazy, but we can't do much to stop that. So again, if we're sending out information that includes PII, particularly social security numbers, we truncate that information. We securely dispose of PII. We have a shredding service. We have locked shredding bins that information goes in internally. Section 9 relates to moving protected information around on transportable media, laptops, thumb drives. We don't have floppy disks anymore, but you know.
I wish we did.
So really and truly, there is very little reason. We have people who work remotely, take their laptops home, but all of the access to TRS information is through the state firewall and on the state network. So the information is not on those laptops.
Right.
There's really no reason why TRS staff should be carrying. I always point out that I am probably the biggest issue, because in legal cases, I think about everything going on right now, but you know, I'm frequently dealing with documentation and that sort of thing that includes protected information, but for the most part, there should be no reason that TRS staff are taking information out on transportable devices or media. Section 10 says that we're going to have provision in our contracts with all of our third-party agents, all of our service providers, that prevent them from using or disclosing protected information inappropriately as well. We have something called a third-party agent agreement that is a whole additional agreement that is an attachment to and incorporated with our service provider agreements. So we handle that in that manner. Section B, the notice of breach of security of a data system, is also a requirement under the state law. If we have a breach of a data system where it is likely or possible that somebody's private information has been breached, we have some obligations. I want to preface, it's not in this policy, but if this happens, if we become aware either through a third agent, you know, one of our service providers, or just personally internally, that we've had potentially a data system breach, the first telephone we call is to state risk management and tort defense, and our insurers get notified, because the process for handling and you know, managing the notice requirements and that sort of thing comes through that process. We also have in our third-party agent agreement a requirement that the costs essentially and the work to be done to notify our members, benefit recipients, but you know, anybody whose information may have been breached, they're going to at least contractually, they're obligated to pick up those costs. And, you know, we also have insurance coverage and that would manage some of that as well. Finally, we are required by state statute, if we have a breach, at the time that we have to notify the individuals affected, we have to provide notification to the Attorney General's office, and to, I want to say, it should say, maybe not. We used to have to notify legislative audit as well. Maybe that's, anyway. Policy should be correct and up to date, so, but we have to provide notice to the Attorney General's office of the breach of the data system as well. Otherwise, they start getting calls from people about how can you let this happen and who's gonna help me out here, and they've not received notice from us or another agency essentially that an issue has occurred. So that's the end of the policy unless somebody has questions.
Denise, I have a question for you on that breach. If that ever happened, do we have things in place in order to make sure, like the bank would do or the healthcare system would do, that we would pay for some kind of tracking for people, or is it all on their own?
No, and in fact, Member Brown, that is my understanding, and I'm certain that this is the case. That is part of the insurance coverage that risk management provides to agencies. That's part of the insurance coverage we have, that they would remediate the breach incident, providing credit monitoring and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Denise. All right. Public comment again. And then we finally have an action item at the bottom here. Well, we're not done yet, but board committee appointments. And so every year at this meeting, we appoint different committees. There are 3 committees we kind of have. We have 6 board members. We like to have 2 board members on each committee. It's not a huge commitment to anything. For example, I'm on the Personnel and Policy Committee, so when it's time to look at pay or Sean's evaluation or different things like that, I'm involved. The Legislation and Litigation Committee would work with Sean again and Denise and anything that's going on. It's really basically for them to bounce ideas off of, to get ideas from the board, and then we bring it back to the whole board. And then the same thing with the Budget and the Audit Committee. Currently, the Budget and the Audit Committee are both Dan's, Dan Trost and Dan Chamberlain, who both have a financial background. Daniel Trost is also our board member who sits on the Board of Investments for us. And so he brings back information for us, but that's not part of this committee. It's just.
Sorry. So currently Dan Chamberlain's on the Budget Audit and Audit Committee, and the other seat's vacant.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, Dan Trost switched to legislation last time around.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And I did speak to both Dan and Dee, and they both would prefer to continue to serve on the Legislation Committee.
Okay. So Dee and Dan are on the Legislation and Litigation. So that one is basically full. So basically what we're asking today is for both of you, would you like to be on the Budget and Audit Committee? And again, they will talk to you about, Nolan would talk to you about the budget, et cetera. You know, the Audit Committee, I do have to get certain things as the board chair, but he would have you look at the audit kinds of things. Or the Personnel and Policy, which again is fairly easy, but in May I come a little bit earlier, about 7:30, and we go through all of Sean's things. But again, we also have somebody who helps us to go through all of that to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So yeah, do any of those amazing committees sound interesting to you? It's not a lot of extra time, and it's always during the board
Either or is
meetings.
fine.
Maybe a couple emails.
My first day, so.
Yeah, either works for me. I do a lot of work with Personnel and Policy on some of the other boards that I'm on, so I might be more valuable in that role.
Let's do that.
So
Why not?
I'll do the other one.
Okay. All right, let's do that. So basically, again, we need an action item a motion to accept those committee appointments.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Dee.
Since it is us, can we
Yes.
second? Okay, I'll second.
All right. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? And Dee, you are still comfortable with legislation?
I am. In fact, I'm going back to DC this weekend for my national meeting. So I'll fill you in when I get back.
Excellent. With Lee?
Yes, with Lee. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so all those in favor of the new committee appointments indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye as well.
So just real quickly, I'll just give you a quick update for now that the committees are set. So my annual evaluation, shortly after this meeting, you'll get a survey from Jim Cairns. We're running behind, he missed it. So usually it should have started in December and we would have the results for this meeting, but it's fine, we'll make it up. But as soon as we get done with this, he'll send out a survey to the board, a survey to staff. And then now that our chair and Mr. Crump are on the committee, you'll hear from him a little bit more. You'll probably have potentially a phone call before we meet in person, which will be right before the next board meeting. And then we'll just go through my evaluation and away we go. As far as the budget committee is concerned, you'll hear from myself and Nolan. We'll set up a meeting with you and Dan Chamberlain to review our budget request, and we'll go through line by line and we'll talk about everything that's sort of different for sure. And we can also justify any of our existing budget items. That typically only takes about an hour, and we'll just schedule that for whatever time of day works best for you.
Okay.
And Dan Chamberlain's retired, so we should be able to get in most of the time. Okay?
Most of the time for me, it's gonna be either I take time off, because my prep's at the end of the day, which is brutal. But it would have to be like after 4.
Okay, and we can do that. We can accommodate that.
That's the easiest if we don't need it. We can bump it up to 3, but after 4 is best.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to close the meeting to do our disability applications and go through that process. All right, I need a motion for the disability request of Laura A. Mullen.
I'd make that motion.
Approve?
To approve, sorry. I will
That's
make
okay,
a motion to approve the disability request for Laura Mullen.
I'll second
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. All right, the last thing we have today is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
it. I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Favor indicate by
Aye.
Chair votes aye.